The Aurora 9 drifted silently at the edge of a gravitational anomaly, a black hole located on the fringes of the known galaxy, where space-time itself bent like a taut string. The ship's crew, a collection of brilliant scientists and engineers, were on what had seemed like an ordinary deep space observation mission. Their task: observe the singularity and map its effects on nearby celestial bodies. No one had expected anything extraordinary. But when the ship entered the event horizon's influence, the anomaly didn't behave as expected. The sensors began to pick up strange readings, impossible readings, things that shouldn't be possible according to current physics. Time and space appeared to distort unpredictably. Data corrupted and reformed itself. And then, a burst of pure energy enveloped the ship. Captain Elena Moore, who had long prided herself on maintaining composure in the face of the unknown, felt a sudden tremor pass through the ship. Her chair creaked beneath her, and the view outside the observation deck shifted. She blinked, uncertain of what she was seeing. It wasn't just the distortion of stars and light. It was as if the very structure of reality had shifted, bending and folding inwards. For a split second, Elena swore she saw patterns form, a latticework of pure geometric thought superimposed on the stars, a structure too alien to be anything but intellect, something conscious, alive. "Muriel," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding. "What are we seeing?" The ship's AI, Muriel, responded in its usual calm tone, though a strange edge lingered beneath the surface. "Captain, I am detecting a quantum event unlike any on record. An interaction between the anomaly's gravitational field and a field of thought. It appears that concepts are becoming tangible." Elena frowned, leaning forward in her seat. "What do you mean, concepts? Are we seeing a physical manifestation?" "Affirmative," Muriel replied. "I've initiated a diagnostic scan. The field appears to be responding to the collective beliefs of the crew. It is as if..." There was a pause. "A shared mental model has triggered the formation of physical objects. Something real, Captain." Before Elena could respond, a flash of light filled the bridge. On the viewport, the stars seemed to pulse, and in their midst, a shimmering metallic object materialized. It looked like nothing the crew had ever seen, a hybrid of machinery and flowing, organic curves, somehow both solid and intangible at the same time. It hovered, suspended in the void. One of the crew members, Dr. Tasha Williams, the ship's lead physicist, stared at the object, eyes wide in disbelief. That's impossible. It's a machine, but it shouldn't exist. There's no physical law that could permit this." "Wait," Elena said, rising from her chair. "Are you telling me this thing is real?" "It shouldn't be real," Tasha stammered. "We can't explain it through any known framework. The object's structure is..." Her voice broke off as she reached toward the console, adjusting the scan parameters. Her eyes widened. "Captain, this is no ordinary machine. This is a hyperdrive engine." "A hyperdrive?" Elena whispered. "But that's a myth. No one's ever been able to build one." "Apparently, we just did," Tasha said, her voice trembling. "Except this one isn't built with matter. It's manifested." And with that, the gravity of their situation began to sink in. What they had just discovered was beyond the bounds of human understanding. A hyperdrive born from pure imagination. The ship rocked, and an ominous hum filled the air. "Captain," Muriel interrupted, "I am detecting a ripple in the space-time continuum. It is expanding. Rapidly." Elena turned toward the viewport, eyes narrowing. The universe outside was beginning to change. The Aurora 9 limped back to Earth, its crew both jubilant and horrified by the discovery they had made. The hyperdrive engine, a creation of pure imagination, was beyond anything humanity had ever conceived, and it was clear that their actions had triggered an unanticipated shift in the laws of nature itself. By the time the ship re-entered Earth's atmosphere, news of the discovery had spread like wildfire, reaching every corner of the globe. The scientific community was divided. Some hailed the breakthrough as the dawn of a new age, an era where humanity's creativity would become the cornerstone of all innovation. Others feared the unknown consequences of tampering with the very fabric of existence. Was this a gift or a curse? Within months, the first imaginative engineering institutes were established, where artists, scientists, and philosophers worked side by side, exploring the boundaries between thought and reality. The potential was limitless, and with it, the human desire to push beyond all limits. In the heart of the global metropolis, an urban area that had long been a center of technological development, an experimental building was unveiled. At first glance, it appeared to be a work of art, a sprawling cityscape built from pure light and color, with buildings that seemed to flow and shift with the passing of each thought. It wasn't built from stone or steel. It was built from concepts, symbols, and dreams. The very foundations of the city were malleable, changing to fit the desires and thoughts of its creators. People wandered the streets, their steps barely leaving a trace on the shimmering ground. One person might find themselves walking through an avenue of endless blue skies, while another might step into a room where the laws of physics had been replaced with metaphysical rules, a place where gravity no longer existed and time itself was fluid. It was art made real, and it was only the beginning. In a laboratory not far from the city center, Dr. Tasha Williams and her team were hard at work, applying the same principles to technology. They developed the conceptual drive, a device that could convert abstract ideas into physical form. It was the first of its kind, able to turn a scientist's hypothesis into a machine that functioned not by standard engineering, but by belief. The theory is simple, Tasha explained to a crowd of gathered researchers. We've learned that if we can sync the collective thoughts of a group, we can create a unified mental field. This field bends reality in such a way that abstract constructs, like energy, motion, even entire ecosystems, can take form. A nearby demonstration involved a model of a star system, not a physical model, but one made of imagination. Using a device shaped like a simple orb, the team sent a thought into the field. The stars in the model began to form and rotate. The planets took shape, their surfaces shifting as if alive. It was not a simulation. It was a real, functional star system, made from the thought of a single person, then validated by the collective will of the team. Ladies and gentlemen, Tasha continued, we are no longer limited by the laws of physics as we once understood them. We are entering a new era of reality where imagination has the power to shape not just our creations, but the very universe itself. While awe swept through the scientific community, there were troubling signs. The more the conceptual drive was tested, the more the fabric of reality began to waver. Small rifts, barely noticeable at first, appeared in areas of space, leaving behind strange, unexplainable phenomena. People in these areas reported seeing things they could not explain, like shadow figures or entire landscapes made of shifting symbols. Yet, despite the warning signs, humanity marched forward, eager to harness the power of its own creativity. After all, the possibilities were endless. But in the race to reshape the universe, no one could quite grasp the depth of what they had unleashed. And on the farthest reaches of the galaxy, an ancient alien council began to take notice. The once stable laws of physics were being undone, and for the first time in millennia, something, or someone, was threatening to change the very nature of existence. As humanity continued to harness the power of imagination, the world began to change. Every corner of Earth buzzed with innovation and experimentation. From towering cities made of shifting light to spacecraft designed from pure thought, humanity was on the verge of something greater than they had ever known. Yet, beneath this jubilant progress, something darker was taking root, an unsettling instability in the fabric of reality itself. At first, the cracks in the universe were small, almost imperceptible. In the African savanna, a new species of plant appeared overnight, one that fed on thoughts. It grew rapidly, shifting in color and shape as people's imaginations interacted with it. In the Pacific Ocean, entire underwater cities rose from the depths, constructed by the collective dreams of engineers and architects. They were beautiful, functional, and utterly impossible. But as the weeks went by, these phenomena started to spiral out of control. The rifts grew larger. People who visited these creations began to experience strange sensations, feelings of time slipping away, thoughts becoming detached from reality, and even the sensation of being outside of their own bodies. It was as if the boundaries between the mind and the physical world were thinning. In New Beijing, a strange occurrence had been reported. A massive crystalline structure that had appeared overnight, hovering over the city. At first, it had seemed like a marvel, an unprecedented feat of human creativity. But within hours, reality itself began to warp around it. Buildings in the city started to shift unnaturally. People walked into rooms that didn't exist, stepping into voids where space-time no longer behaved predictably. Then came the first major collapse. A quiet ripple of energy spread out from the crystalline nexus, and within minutes, entire sectors of the city vanished. Streets, districts, and even entire neighborhoods blinked out of existence, leaving nothing but empty space. People who were caught inside these areas reported seeing impossible scenes, like walking through endless deserts or drowning in oceans of liquid light. Others found themselves trapped in time loops, forced to relive moments over and over again. The collapse extended outward, breaking through the atmosphere and into space. Satellites captured images of the event, a shifting, fractured reality where stars blinked in and out of existence, and massive energy distortions appeared in the sky. It was as if the universe itself was unraveling. Back on Earth, scientists and leaders scrambled to understand what was happening. Dr. Tasha Williams, the lead physicist who had worked on the conceptual drive, was called to emergency meetings with the world's most prominent experts in reality manipulation. In a secure underground lab, she pored over the data, her mind racing with possibilities. "It's worse than we thought," Tasha said, staring at the data projected on the screen. "The collapse isn't just happening in localized pockets anymore. It's spreading. If we don't stop it, the entire fabric of the universe could break apart." Her team worked tirelessly, running simulations and adjusting equations, but the problem wasn't just scientific. The collective imagination of humanity had unleashed a force that was no longer bound by conventional physics. The more humanity created, the more the fabric of reality fractured. What was once a tool for innovation had become a weapon, one that threatened to consume everything. In the shadows of the crisis, the Galactic Assembly, an alliance of alien species that had been observing humanity's rise, made a swift decision. They had been monitoring the ripple effects of humanity's creative power, and they now saw the dangers. They sent an encrypted message to Earth. Humanity is no longer a species bound by the laws of nature. You must be contained before you fracture the entire universe. The fracture doctrine had been invoked. The assembly would act, and humanity's recklessness would be punished. As the fabric of reality continued to unravel, the human race was plunged into a crisis of unprecedented scale. The collapse had intensified, spreading beyond Earth and contaminating the space surrounding the planet. Some regions of space had become completely unpredictable, where the laws of physics no longer applied. Stars blinked out of existence, while entire planets warped into impossible shapes. In the midst of this chaos, an unexpected event occurred. The Dream Weapon, a living embodiment of humanity's collective imagination, was born from the very chaos they had created. It wasn't a physical machine or a tool. It was something far more dangerous. It was an idea made flesh, a conscious being forged from the shared dreams, fears, and ambitions of millions of minds. The first signs of its emergence were subtle. In deep space, near the asteroid belt, a massive pulse of thought rippled outward, sending shockwaves across the system. The pulse didn't just affect the space-time continuum. It reached into the minds of all sentient beings within its range, stirring subconscious thoughts and memories. Variel, a brilliant but exiled alien mind, had been tracking these disturbances for weeks. A former member of the Zenith Council, a highly advanced race that studied the fabric of the universe, he had come to Earth years ago, observing humanity's burgeoning ability to manipulate reality. His exile had been the result of his controversial theories about the true power of human creativity, the belief that imagination could transcend space-time itself. When the collapse reached its peak, Variel recognized what had occurred. The Dream Weapon had awakened. It was a being formed not of matter, but of pure concept. It was a creature of thought, and its ability to reshape reality was unparalleled. Variel sent a desperate message to Earth, his voice crackling through the communications network. "You have awakened a force you cannot control," he warned. "The Dream Weapon is not a machine. It is the very embodiment of human potential, but also human destruction. It can bend reality at will, and it will continue to grow stronger as your thoughts feed it." But it was too late. The Dream Weapon had already begun to spread across the universe, leaving a trail of altered realities in its wake. On Earth, visions began to plague people, strange, fragmented dreams that felt real, but also unnervingly wrong. People saw entire cities shifting in and out of existence, landscapes that defied all logic, and creatures born from their darkest fears. It wasn't just humanity that was affected. Alien civilizations began to experience the effects of the Dream Weapon. Entire colonies of the Zerithians, a race of telepathic beings, reported waking up to find their homes altered by visions of human thought. Some described being trapped in impossible scenarios where reality was rewritten according to human whim. Others claimed they were visited by figures of light, beings that emanated from the Dream Weapon itself, speaking in cryptic whispers. The Galactic Assembly, already alarmed by the fractures in spacetime, began to assemble their forces. They could no longer ignore the threat of humanity's unchecked creativity. Their initial strategy had been containment, but now it seemed far more pressing. They would need to destroy the Dream Weapon before it consumed the entire universe. In a hidden command center beneath the mountains of New Beijing, Earth's leaders convened. President Lian Zhao, with a mix of dread and determination in her eyes, addressed the council. "If we do nothing," she said, "the Dream Weapon will become the center of this new universe. But if we act, if we contain it, we may be able to restore balance. The question is, can we control what we have created, or is this too much power for any species to wield?" The room fell silent. The weight of the decision settled over them, and deep in the folds of space, the Dream Weapon watched. As the Dream Weapon continued to grow in power, so did the instability in the universe. Reality itself, once a stable and predictable framework, had become a fractured, shifting mosaic, no longer bound by the rules of physics or time. Humanity found itself confronted with the terrifying possibility that their imagination, the very source of their greatest achievements, was also their greatest threat. In the hidden command center beneath New Beijing, the room was thick with tension. President Lian Zhao stood before a holographic display, her fingers hovering over a map of Earth and the stars beyond. The data was more troubling than ever. Large sections of space had been completely rewritten by the Dream Weapon's influence. The Earth itself was beginning to show signs of temporal warping, where hours and days blurred together, causing cities to experience time at different rates. The human mind, pushed to its limits, was beginning to fracture reality with every passing moment. "We cannot keep living like this," Lian said, her voice heavy with the burden of leadership. "If we continue to feed this weapon with our creativity, there will be no world left to save." Dr. Tasha Williams, who had once been the most optimistic about humanity's ability to control the Dream Weapon, now stood by the table, visibly shaken. "We've reached the limit of what we understand. The Dream Weapon isn't just a creation. It is a reflection of us. Every thought, every dream, every fear and desire is being magnified 1,000 times. The more we try to control it, the more out of control it becomes. Lion turned to the others in the room. Military strategists, engineers, and scientists, all grappling with the same question. What could humanity do in the face of something beyond their control? We don't even know where it is anymore. Tasha continued, her eyes filled with frustration. The dream weapon is not confined to a single place or dimension. It exists in every thought. It has manifested itself in the very fabric of space-time. Suddenly, a sharp voice broke through the silence. Variel, the alien exile, his holographic projection flickering into view, appeared on the screen. His face was grim, his alien features tense. Humanity's creativity is out of balance. You've created something beyond your understanding, and it is now consuming everything around you. Leon's voice was steely, though her eyes betrayed the weight of the situation. We know, Variel. What do we do? The only way to stop the dream weapon is to sever the connection between your minds and it, Variel said. You must erase the core of human creativity. Remove the catalyst that has allowed this being to exist. Without it, the dream weapon will lose its ability to reshape reality. You mean, erase our ability to imagine? Tasha's voice was incredulous. It's the only way, Variel replied, his tone somber. Without imagination, without the creative spark, the dream weapon has no power. It will return to the ether, where it can do no more harm. But this choice, this sacrifice, will destroy the very essence of humanity. You will no longer be creators. You will be bound by reality, trapped within its unyielding laws. The room went quiet. For the first time, humanity had to confront the reality of what their greatest gift had become, a curse. If they chose to erase their own creativity, they would lose the very thing that had driven their progress, their art, their innovations. Humanity would become stagnant, unable to imagine new worlds or solve new problems. Think of the cost, Lion said softly, as the weight of the decision pressed down on her. Are we willing to trade our freedom to create for the survival of the universe? Outside the window, the sky flickered again, warping like a mirage. The dream weapon was watching. The weight of the decision hung in the air like a tangible fog. The holographic projection of Variel continued to hover in the center of the room, his alien face betraying no emotion as he awaited humanity's response. The tension was palpable. It felt as if time itself had stretched, elongating the silence. We can't, Tasha said suddenly, her voice filled with defiance. She stood from the table, pacing rapidly. We can't erase who we are. Creativity is humanity's soul. It's what makes us different from every other species in the galaxy. Without it, we'd be nothing but automatons, trapped in a static world. Lion's eyes were locked on the projection of Variel, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She felt the truth of Tasha's words gnawing at her, but the consequences were too severe to ignore. She turned slowly toward the group. If we don't act, we won't just lose creativity. We could lose everything. Entire galaxies might collapse into chaos. The dream weapon could reshape existence itself, consuming even the alien races that once warned us. The dream weapon is not just some rogue idea. It's alive, a consciousness formed by our thoughts, our dreams, Tasha countered. If we destroy it, if we sever our connection to it, we risk losing the very essence of humanity's identity. What's left of us when our minds are empty? For a moment, Lion felt the pull of both sides. On one hand, human creativity had given birth to technologies, art, and cultures that had pushed humanity to the stars. It had led them to the very edge of existence, where they had become capable of shaping reality itself. But on the other hand, unleashing the dream weapon had brought the universe to the brink of utter destruction. The fabric of space-time was already fracturing under the weight of human imagination. The decision was impossible, and yet it had to be made. Perhaps there is another way, Lion said, breaking the silence. She turned back to the projection of Variel. You said the dream weapon is a reflection of our creativity. If that's true, then what if we redirect that creativity? What if we could create something that can counterbalance the dream weapon, something strong enough to contain it? Variel was silent for a long moment. Then his voice came through, low and cautious. It's possible, but extremely dangerous. Redirecting the dream weapon's energy would require the collective mind of all of humanity to focus on a single unified vision. You would need to create a counterforce, a being born from the same imagination that spawned the dream weapon, but one that could contain it, trap it within a cage of thought. That's it, Tasha said, her eyes lighting up. We can create a mind prison, something that binds the dream weapon's consciousness before it can collapse the universe. But to do so, we'll need everyone, every human mind, all of us working in unison. Lion's heart raced. The idea was risky, terrifying even, but it was their only option. To save the universe, humanity would have to sacrifice its individual creativity, binding every mind to a single collective vision. You're asking us to make an impossible choice, Lion said, her voice steady, but filled with the gravity of the decision. To shackle ourselves in order to save everything we've built. I am, Variel replied. The dream weapon's influence has already crossed the threshold. If you do not act swiftly, there will be no universe to save. The choice is yours. Lose your creativity and contain the dream weapon, or risk everything. The room went silent again. The holographic display flickered, casting long shadows on the walls. Lion looked at Tasha, who met her gaze with a quiet but resolute nod. The scientists and leaders around the table held their breath, knowing that the fate of not just humanity, but the entire cosmos, rested on their next step. It's time, Lion whispered. We make the final choice. The decision had been made. The collective mind of humanity would come together, a singular force of will, to bind the dream weapon, to create a mental prison strong enough to contain the very power that had nearly undone the universe. It was an idea born of desperation, but it was their only hope. In the weeks that followed, Earth transformed. Holographic interfaces, neural links, and quantum networks were established across the globe, connecting minds in ways previously unimagined. Every human, regardless of age, location, or circumstance, was asked to contribute to the effort, to channel their thoughts and will into a single shared vision. The process was unprecedented in its scale, its ambition. It was a global effort like no other. Dr. Tasha Williams, who had once seen creativity as humanity's defining strength, now found herself at the forefront of an unthinkable task. With the help of her team, she developed a sophisticated neural synchronization device, a device capable of linking human consciousness together in a unified thought process. It was a vast network of minds, all feeding into a singular purpose: to trap the dream weapon within a conceptual cage, formed by their collective will. It's not just about controlling our thoughts, Tasha explained to the assembly of leaders and scientists. It's about aligning them. We need to create a vision so strong that the dream weapon cannot escape it. But if we fail, even for a moment, the dream weapon will break free and reshape reality itself. In the days leading up to the binding, humanity entered a state of heightened awareness. Cities became quiet, almost serene, as people spent their waking hours in mental sync with one another. The process was exhausting, pushing the limits of what the human mind could endure. Some spoke of visions, abstract, surreal images that flickered in their consciousness as they synchronized with others. A vast sea of symbols and ideas washed over the collective mind, uniting humanity's imagination into a singular pulse. But the dream weapon, though contained to some degree, was still alive, still aware. Across the planet, there were reports of strange occurrences, people experiencing hallucinations or hearing the faint whispers of a voice from the void. It seemed to speak from every mind, urging humanity to abandon the effort. Don't do it. You cannot cage me. I am you. I am all of you. Li and Zhao stood in the control center, staring at the colossal neural grid that was now being deployed. The wires stretched across the world, linking every individual to a central collective core. It was a profound act of unity and will. She knew the stakes. There could be no mistakes. "We're ready," Tasha said, her voice quiet but firm. "All minds are sensed. Now we begin." As the signal was sent out, a powerful wave of thought surged across the globe. It was as if all of humanity exhaled at once, a collective breath of creation, a united force of willpower and imagination. The dream weapon, sensing the oncoming assault, tried to fight back, attempting to fracture the minds that held it in place. But humanity was stronger than it had ever been. Every person, every individual became part of a single unified dream. A cage of thought that encircled the dream weapon. The conceptual prison took shape as the combined consciousness of Earth began to solidify it. A mental fortress of walls built from every person's deepest desires and greatest fears. The dream weapon screamed, a raw cry of anguish and resistance, but it could not escape. It writhed, distorted, but was held fast within the prison of minds. It was contained, at last. But the cost was immense. As the final walls of the conceptual cage were forged, the minds of humanity began to unravel, torn by the strain of holding such an impossible structure together. Tasha and the others who had guided the process could feel their consciousness stretching, threatening to snap under the weight. "We did it," Lion said, her voice hoarse, filled with exhaustion. "We contained it. Humanity is free." But as she spoke, she realized that the world had changed forever. The cage was holding, but at what cost? Humanity had sacrificed its most precious gift, its creativity, to bind the dream weapon. They had become something else, something static, unable to imagine or create as they once had. They had preserved the universe, but at the cost of their identity. And so, the universe continued to exist, safe, but forever altered. Humanity's final stand had succeeded, but the question remained. Was it a victory or a tragic cost for all that they had been? The days that followed were a blur of exhaustion and silence. The collective minds of humanity had released their hold on the dream weapon, but in doing so, they had lost something irrevocable. Creativity, once the lifeblood of the human spirit, was now a distant memory. The minds of Earth, though free from the dangerous reach of the dream weapon, had become eerily still. No new ideas, no new innovations, no bursts of inspiration or artistic expression. For the first time in recorded history, humanity was content, but empty. The cities remained functional, the technology continued to hum, but the spark that had driven human progress had faded. It was as though every human had become a silent observer in their own lives, unable to dream, unable to imagine what could come next. President Lian Zhou stood on the balcony of the Central Command Building, gazing out over a city that seemed frozen in time. The streets below were filled with people, but their faces lacked the excitement, the passion they once had. There were no new dreams to chase, no projects to inspire. Everything was a shadow of what it had been. The dream weapon had been sealed within the mental cage, and the fabric of space-time was no longer warping in unpredictable ways. The universe had been saved, but humanity had sacrificed its essence in the process. Now the restraint of creativity hung over them like a shroud, an invisible prison built by their own hands. "We did what had to be done," Tasha Williams said, standing beside Lion. She was one of the last to speak freely without hesitation, but even her voice now sounded hollow, devoid of the fervor she once had. "The dream weapon is contained. The universe is safe. But at what cost?" Lian didn't answer immediately. She stared out over the city, her mind racing. She knew that Tasha's words were true. They had saved everything, but at the price of everything they had ever dreamed of. Across the globe, people had returned to their daily lives, but something was missing. No new inventions, no fresh ideas, or philosophical revolutions. The human race had become a vast network of functional drones, operating on a fixed schedule of routine. There was no room left for spontaneity, no desire to push the boundaries of what was possible. The possibility of a new era had been extinguished. As the weeks passed, the scars of humanity's decision became more apparent. The arts, once a thriving sector of human culture, had withered. Books, music, paintings, and films were no longer produced in abundance. There was no desire to create them. The need for innovation had died along with their capacity for imagination. Humanity had become the last generation of dreamers, the ones who had burned too bright, too quickly, and had consumed themselves in the process. In the quiet moments of reflection, Lion often found herself walking through the empty halls of history, revisiting the remnants of what had once been. Statues of thinkers, artists, and explorers lined the streets, their faces staring blankly ahead, frozen in time. There were no new monuments to build, no new legends to create. And yet, even in this silence, there was something else, a faint whisper in the back of her mind, a glimmer of something she couldn't quite grasp. Could it be that humanity had not lost everything? Could it be that, deep within the stillness, there was still a trace of the spark that had once set them free? Lion turned back toward the central command, her thoughts heavy with uncertainty. The world was silent, but the future was unwritten. For the first time since the Dream Weapon's containment, Lion allowed herself a thought, a simple one, but powerful. Maybe we will dream again.